They smiled at me across the table like actors rehearsing a scene they had already perfected. The restaurant was elegant, soft music floating above white linen and crystal glasses glowing under warm lights. Everything looked like a celebration, but I knew better. This was not dinner. This was an execution. "You are going to love the new retirement home," Penelope said. Her smile stretched tight, her eyelashes perfect, her voice sweet enough to rot. Charles nodded beside her like a loyal dog. Leo stared at his plate, but I could see the numbers running through his mind. I smiled back because that is what I had learned to do my entire life. I smiled and said, "Yes, that sounds lovely." And inside, something finally broke. "Confused," Charles said gently, using the suit I bought him years ago to bury me. Confused, like I was already halfway gone, like 72 meant invisible, like my mind had suddenly evaporated. "Dr. Miller says it would be best," Leo added quickly, "a controlled environment, people your age." People your age. As if I were no longer human, as if the decades I spent building everything they now wanted had never existed, as if I had not started with $5,000 and turned it into a life that fed, clothed, educated, and rescued them again and again. I watched their hands touch the table, the glasses, the silverware, the things I paid for, the future they were already dividing. They spoke of knitting classes, of safety, of responsibility, while planning to erase me. When I asked what would happen to my properties, the silence tasted metallic. They lied softly, said they would take care of it, that it was too much for me now. Too much. That night, I pretended to swallow the pills Penelope gave me. I let them believe I was asleep while they counted my life in dollars, in whispers. They spoke of selling my homes, of declaring me incompetent, of moving fast before I realized. They underestimated me. At dawn, I dressed in black, took only what mattered, and left without permission because I finally understood something. Freedom does not ask. I flew to a place they did not know existed, a house by the sea where my past waited quietly, where loyalty still lived, where a woman named Eliza had kept my truth safe for decades. When I opened that door and smelled salt and memory, I felt myself return. Eliza knew I would come. She had protected the documents, the will, the plan I created 30 years ago when I first realized my children saw me as an inheritance, not a mother. Together we opened the safe. Together we woke the woman they tried to bury. By the time the sun set, I was no longer afraid. I was ready. The house by the sea did not ask me to explain myself. It welcomed me, the way memory does, quietly, honestly, without judgment. The sound of waves pressed gently against the walls like a heartbeat, reminding me that time still moved forward, even when people tried to stop it. I slept that night, deeper than I had in years, not because I was tired, but because I was finally safe. In the morning, Eliza made coffee the way she always had, strong and simple. We sat at the wooden table, watching light stretch across the floor. She did not ask questions. She knew me too well. She only said, "They will come looking." And I nodded because I already felt them pulling at the edges of my peace. They called before noon. Penelope's voice cracked between anger and panic, asking where I was, saying I worried them, saying they were afraid I was confused. I let her talk until her words ran out, and then I spoke calmly, telling her I was fine, telling her I was exactly where I wanted to be. The silence on the other end felt like victory. By afternoon, the threats began. Leo warned me about doctors, courts, responsibility. Charles begged, saying I was tearing the family apart. They spoke like I was misbehaving, not surviving. They never asked how I felt. They never asked what I wanted. That night, Eliza laid the papers across the table. Deeds, accounts, letters, names I had not spoken in years. Everything was there, exactly as I left it, untouched, waiting for the day I would need it. And suddenly, I remembered the woman I used to be, the one who planned ahead because she knew love could turn conditional. I remembered the night 30 years earlier when I sat alone after hearing my children argue about money they did not yet own. I remembered deciding then that I would never allow myself to be erased quietly. I prepared, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. The next morning, I called my attorney, a man who remembered me as sharp and precise. He listened, he believed me, and within hours, the world began to shift. The power they thought they held slipped through their fingers like sand. They did not know that every property, every account, every decision required my consent. They did not know that I had already chosen my ending. When the papers were filed, when the truth became solid and legal, I stood on the beach watching waves erase footprints, thinking about how easy it is to underestimate someone who stays quiet for too long. They arrived 2 days later, standing at the gate of the house by the sea, dressed in concern and entitlement, demanding explanations, demanding access, demanding control. I watched them through the window and felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, only distance. When I opened the door, I did not invite them in. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself. I simply told them the truth. I am not confused. I am not sick. I am not yours to manage. They argued, they cried, they accused, they reminded me of everything they believed I owed them. I listened patiently, and then I told them what I had learned, too late, but not too late to matter. Love that demands obedience is not love. Care that costs dignity is not care. Family that feeds on silence is not family. I closed the door gently, and the sound echoed like freedom. That night, I wrote letters, not of apology, but of closure. I released myself from the roles I had played too long, the fixer, the provider, the quiet one. I let them go. Days passed slowly, beautifully. I walked the shoreline, I cooked for myself, I laughed with Eliza. I felt my body soften as if it finally believed I would protect it. And in that quiet, I understood something profound. Survival does not always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like standing still and refusing to move for anyone, ever. The days after they left felt unfamiliar, like learning how to walk again in a body that had been braced for impact for decades. Every sound no longer startled me, every knock did not tighten my chest. I began to notice small things again. The way sunlight softened the corners of the room, the way my hands looked calmer when I held a cup of tea, the way silence could feel full instead of empty. But peace does not mean the storm has ended. It only means you have learned how to stand without shaking. They did not stop trying. Letters arrived first, written with careful words, pretending concern, but hiding hunger beneath each sentence. Penelope spoke of family unity. Leo spoke of responsibility. Charles spoke of regret. None of them spoke of apology. None of them asked what they had done to break me. Then the legal notices came, challenges, accusations, whispered attempts to paint me as unstable, ungrateful, selfish. I read them without panic because something fundamental had shifted inside me. I was no longer trying to prove my worth to people who benefited from my doubt. My attorney handled the noise with precision. Every attempt they made only revealed more truth, more evidence, more clarity. And slowly, the power dynamic reversed. The more they pushed, the more visible their intentions became. One afternoon, I stood in the garden behind the house by the sea, planting lavender, my hands deep in soil, when Eliza came outside, holding a letter. She did not speak at first. She simply watched me finish what I was doing, then handed it to me, quietly. It was from Leo, his handwriting uneven, desperate. He wrote that things had become difficult, that they had expected certain things, that life had not turned out the way they planned. He did not say sorry. He said lost. He did not say wrong. He said confused. I folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer without response, not out of cruelty, but out of truth. I had spent my entire life answering needs that were never mine to carry. As weeks passed, the attempts slowed. Their confidence had been built on my compliance, and without it, they were unsteady. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness, and now they did not know how to stand without it. And in that space, something beautiful began to happen. I started choosing again, not reactively, not apologetically, but deliberately. I painted the guest room the color of morning light. I learned the names of the neighbors. I joined a small book group at the local library where no one asked what I could give, only what I thought. I laughed more openly than I had in years, not because life was perfect, but because it was mine. And in that quiet, I understood something profound. Survival does not always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like standing still and refusing to move for anyone, ever. The days after they left felt unfamiliar.